program.
What you talking about?
The program. The program. Get with the program.
Everybody clap to this. Say what?
Get with the program.
It starts now.
Hello and welcome to Get With The Program Radio Show. I'm your host, Gary Jones. Get With The Program Radio Show is a multicultural, informative, relevant, and entertaining one-hour weekly show offering you a combination of diverse interviews with questions and comments. And as always, we will act as a positive source of information. Now listen, if you want to be a guest on the show, all you got to do is log in to www.getwiththeprogram.biz. Shoot me an email, leave me a message. You never know, you may have a conversation that we would love to talk about. Or give me a call at 919-255-2757. Or shoot me an email, GaryJones16@yahoo.com. And of course, you can visit the website, www.getwiththeprogram.biz. Now, today we're going to be joined in the studio with Steve Rouse. Steve Rouse, a native of Charleston, West Virginia, serves as a council member at large and a former mayor pro tem for the town of Morrisville, North Carolina. Elected 2011, Steve became the first Indian American elected official in Wake County and North Carolina, and the first one re-elected in 2013. He was sworn into his third term on December 14, 2017, and is the longest serving Asian American in North Carolina. Councilmember Rowe serves as a member to the New American Economy, a bipartisan coalition of mayors and business leaders, chaired by former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg, focused on immigration reform in the United States. He also serves as a co-chair of the Mayor's Crusade Against Bullying. He received his BA from Emory University in Political Science, where he played collegiate tennis. Hey, Steve Rouse, welcome to Get With The Program.
Hey, it's always a pleasure to be with you, Gary. Get with the program, and thank you so much for everything you do.
Absolutely, Steve. That's a lot going on, man, right now. As you know, it's a lot of things going on in the news, man. But we're going to get right into it because I know we got a short time, and I know you're busy, man. I've checked your schedule. Steve, you stay busy all the time, man. Every time. Actually, I saw you on the news recently. I see you a lot moving around, man. You are busy.
Well, I'm doing a lot of media work. You and I are doing some radio together. I've got another radio show, and I've been doing a lot of television appearances recently as a commentator talking about different things. So, yeah, it's a good busy, but, keeps you on your toes.
Mm-hmm.
So, one day at a time, right?
That's right. Well, that's a good thing. Well, Steve, you know what's going on. Let's talk a little bit about, since you're in the politics side right now, man. We saw some results the other day with Kamala Harris being selected as the VP, man, for Joe Biden, man. That's interesting, man. What do you think about that?
Well, Gary, this is a great way to start the program today. I mean, this is a historic moment. The first black woman and also an Indian American, her mother is from India, to be selected as the vice presidential candidate, the second highest office in the United States of America, will be running on the ticket for Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game changer. She's 55 years old. She was the Attorney General of California, served with distinction in the United States Senate. Young, dynamic, telegenic, tough, and I think will be a real value add and sort of changes the dynamic. We didn't know whether it was going to be Susan Rice or Amy Klobuchar or Keisha Lance Bottoms from Atlanta, the mayor of Atlanta, Val Demings, former congressman from Florida, or Elizabeth Warren. But I think Biden went with, he said he was going to pick a woman of color, and he did. Interesting, she's a black woman and also got the tie to the Indian and the Asian community. So the only two others that ever risen to the top was Bobby Jindal, governor of Louisiana, Republican,
Mm-hmm.
and former governor of South Carolina, Nick Haley, who's the UN ambassador to President Trump. So very, very, very interesting pick. I've had the honor of being around on the news yesterday talking about my meeting with her. And, it's very interesting. And this really does add a very, very serious dynamic to this presidential race as we head 81 days away from Election Day in the United States.
It's getting close. Steve, do you think she's going to be real strong going up against Vice President Pence?
I think she will be, Gary. I mean, I think that because she was a prosecutor and she's been really tough on crime as an attorney general, the chief law enforcement officer of the state of California, one of the largest states in the union, I think that she will be tough. She's been tough on crime.
Mm-hmm.
I think that she's just a tough, aggressive woman, very good speaker and debater. I think she'll give the vice president all his when she's going to talk about. I think this election is going to really come down to the COVID-19 pandemic and whether we're better off now economically than we were 4 years ago. So I think that unless things improve, I think that'll be in the Democrats' favor. I think she'll be talking about their response to the COVID pandemic, energy, the environment, climate, immigration. These are issues where she's actually been a little bit more progressive than Vice President Biden. When I say progressive, she supported Bernie Sanders on Medicare for all. She supported the Green New Deal for energy. She supported decriminalization of some of the border control, illegal immigrants coming across the border. She opposed the U.S. Canada-Mexico Free Trade Agreement and the Transatlantic Agreement. So there's been some differences with her as vice president, but those stark differences, I think, on a debate stage will give Mike Pence a run for his money. He's going to have to do some significant debate prep to debate Kamala Harris.
Interesting. Now, I noticed I've been seeing lately that she's getting a lot of support from the Indian community lately. I've seen a lot of talk about that. What do you think she's going to get a lot of support from the African American community? You think they're going to really show up for her? Because I hear some things that may have happened over in California, where some of the people think that she wasn't really fair in some of her court cases. But do you think the African American community is going to support her?
I think at the end of the day they will. I mean, I think that's the only wild card. Is and I haven't kept up so much of that history, but just certain, especially in a time now with George Floyd and the racial turmoil, the racial division, the gun shootings that we continue to see taking place almost every week against Black Americans by police officers. Was she tough enough? And I don't know, but at the end of the day, Gary, I think that the Black community will come out to vote for her. I mean, they don't. The only other choice is a vote for Trump and Mike Pence. And I just think that she's got the charisma that standing by Joe Biden as a running mate, who's been very. I mean, let's not forget, Gary, that what's amazing is that Vice President Biden, former Vice President, wasn't even given a chance before the South Carolina primary. He was in last place, hadn't been raising money. His campaign was almost dead. People were leaving, and then Jim Clyburn from South Carolina came in and endorsed him. He won South Carolina, and the whole race changed. That proved that the Black community of this country is behind Joe Biden. So I think with Kamala by his side, I think there's a good case to answer your question that they will come out. And I think it's going to be important in big states like North Carolina, the swing states across this country. But they've got to have good turnout.
Right, that is important. That is important. And the thing that I hear a lot of people saying that have called into me is that the Black African American race will get out to support. And some say they hope that they just don't vote because she's an African American woman. We want to vote because she's going to do the right thing. But it is a good thing to have an African American woman in there. But we certainly hope when she's put into office that she do her due diligence.
Gary, that's a great point. And I did make that point on the TV yesterday. I think it's important to, somebody asked me, what does it feel like being the son of immigrants from India to see someone whose mother was Indian to rise to the second highest office in the land? I think it's a great thing for America. And I think John Lewis died just 2 weeks ago, and he did say that we had come a long way. We've got a long way to go. But growing up, I never thought we would see a person of color in the White House. It just wasn't something that we saw. So I think this is going to be a game changer, and it does show that you can achieve anything in life if you have the right education, the right work ethic. But also, let's not forget that Kamala Harris was an excellent attorney, a prosecutor, attorney general, did a lot of stuff in the U.S. Senate. She wasn't only selected because of her race. And she didn't achieve anything she did in her life only because of her race. And I think that's an important lesson for our kids. I think it also shows that many girls and women of minority status, and many are Indian, are just excited about Kamala Harris because now they can view themselves and say, I can be the president, I can be the vice president, right? I think that's big, but we have to invest in other minority communities, broadband and those kinds of things as we deal with this pandemic. making sure people have good mental health, making sure that they have enough meals to eat at school. We have to make sure that we're providing equal access so that someone like a Kamala Harris can rise regardless of their race, their religion, their ethnic orientation, their sexual orientation, that in these United States, none of that should matter. The queen rises to the top. That's the way it should be.
Excellent point, Steve. Steve, what we're going to do here, we're going to take a break. We come back, we're going to talk more about Kamala Harris. We're going to talk the impact on the election and more about this fourth stimulus package. And also, we're going to touch about that vaccine, man. Listen, we joined today in the studio with Steve Rao. Listen, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after this. Hello and welcome back to Get With The Program radio show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones. Today we are joined in the studio with Steve Rao. Steve Rao is a strong politician here. He's been keeping up with the news and the loop. And we talked before we took the break, we talked a lot about Kamala Harris. So Steve, speaking of Kamala Harris, man, this is not it's a rhetorical conversation that I hear a lot from the baby boomers. A lot say that, being that Kamala Harris is married to a white man, people have a lot of say from the African-American community. Is she really who she says she is? I mean, not that I'm saying that, but people often say, well, how can we trust her because of a cross-race marriage? Is she true to the bone? So I hear that a lot, and I guess that's a question. I certainly hope that doesn't play a strong field in her election.
That does concern me, Gary. I mean, let's not forget that, when Hillary ran, I think sometimes we forget that when Hillary Clinton was the nominee of the party, she was up 20% of the polls. Everyone was coming out. Beyonce and Lady Gaga and famous celebrities were coming out. And she got beat by Donald Trump, a real estate developer who had started his own show, Celebrity Apprentice. But I often wonder, were people saying, it's one thing to say you're going to vote someone, but are you really going to go into voting and do it? Or in this election, they were suspecting in our home state of North Carolina to have 1.7 million absentee ballots. So imagine if you did that in all 50 states, you could have 50 million. I don't know. That's a wild card. I mean, really, I've been hearing this, to be very honest with you, in places that I go, of people not trusting her. Because does she really, first of all, why is it her father is black, but her mother is Indian? So is she black or is she Indian? Where are her allegiances, right? Why did she attack Joe Biden so much in the debate and then all of a sudden come and become good friends? And now I find out she was actually really close to Joe Biden, the Attorney General of Delaware, who died tragically 2 years ago of brain cancer, or a couple years ago of brain cancer. He was Vice President Biden's best friend and own son. So the trust factor does come in, and only time will tell, can she build that rapport and trust? And they may ask her tough questions, and also she's going to have to answer. There's a lot of undecided, Gary. There's a lot of people that need to be persuaded. This election is far from over. So even the Democrats are saying that a lot of their work, so that's the question, is by picking Senator Harris, are we, after the limelight, right now it's like a new toy. It's exciting. She's intelligent, she's charismatic, but when you peel that away, will people go in and pull the lever for her?
Right.
Or are they not going to vote, or are they going to go in for another 4 years of Trump?
Or they're just not going to vote, and just because they may not want to vote for her and Trump. So I certainly hope people go out and vote.
Not voting is often like voting for the opponent, right? Not voting. So it's like if you don't vote, it's better as a Democrat than Donald Trump. And I think that's a really, really good point, Gary, because Trump's strategy of winning is to turn out his base, right? So if 80% of Republicans of that base come out to vote, Donald Trump will be reelected. Will they come out for him? Will they come out for Kamala? Will Republicans cross over and vote Democrat? I don't know. I mean, the last election, there was a lot of crossover votes. So there were Democrats that voted for Trump, right? And that's why he was able to build such a compelling coalition. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think that's going to be the challenge, but only time will tell.
It's a good point. Now, what was so interesting was when John McCain ran for office and he selected Sarah Palin as his running mate, it's almost like it tore him apart. At the end of the day, John McCain even began to look at Sarah a certain way, like, what are you saying? So this is going to be interesting. Now, I wonder, being that we have an African-American woman as vice president, will this really increase the Democratic vote and also the support from different companies around the world, different tech companies? Will this increase the support?
Well, I think that's the thing. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned technology because, we're the hearing last week in Washington on breaking up big tech. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, are they getting too big, right?
Right.
And that's another conversation for another show. But I do think that the fact that she is from California, you have a lot of technology companies out there, that's going to make a difference. Or, the social media is going to get very nasty in this campaign. Tweets, social media posts. How much is Google ads? And the other thing we haven't talked about is the hacks on our election. Is Russia and China, going to get into this election? Are they going to do hacks and get involved in hacking social media sites so misinformation gets out there? So I tell you, this is, and we don't even know. There's been talk. The president's been asked, will you accept the results of the election? And he's been claiming that because it's voter fraud dangers, he may not accept the results of the election. So they're saying that there could be drawn out in the courts, and they may not accept this election, which would be very unfortunate because then it's going to come down to either the U.S. Congress or the Supreme Court, or I don't know. That would really be sad. I hope if there's one thing about the presidency that's inspirational, it's been that it's passed hands within minutes of the swearing in of the new president. The president gets on the other jet and goes home, and then the new person is moved into the Oval Office and immediately transitions the government of the United States.
It's a very good point.
Right?
A very, very, very good point. Speaking of the voting process, you did mention hopefully some country doesn't decide to throw a monkey wrench in the voting process here, throw some kind of curveball. But we are again looking at the electoral votes. Okay, so now we're talking about a whole nother platform here because we get the votes, but the electoral votes. Am I correct on that?
Yes, and that is a really, really good point, Gary. What people don't realize is the presidency of the United States is not based on the popular vote. So let's remember that when Hillary Clinton in the last election, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote but lost the electoral vote. So in order to win the presidency of the United States, you have to receive 275 electoral votes. So what that means is every state has a certain number of electors. The reason the founders of the Constitution put it in was that larger states would have more representation. So California or Texas or North Carolina, where we live, is a big state. We have like 15 electoral votes, I think. Ninth largest state in the country. So, those once the state hits a certain thing, those electoral votes will go to that candidate. So you can win the popular vote, but you can lose the electoral college. And that's what happened with Donald Trump in 2016 when he won the election.
So what I'm hearing, there are so many electoral votes in each state, and how do they calculate that? Or is it just chosen people?
No, I think that I think it just is like, you have your election, the popular vote comes in, and then I think there's a formula that goes in, and the electors, I think there's certain people that serve on the electoral board, and it has to be based on the election return. They will decide, which state goes which way. So, it hits a certain level in North Carolina, Trump's going to get X amount of electoral votes. California is going to get X amount of electoral votes. That's how it's decided.
Right. Well,
so it's very confusing.
I can certainly say that I can tell that Donald Trump is going to come out swinging. I mean, he's already started swinging already. Kamala just got in there and he's already swinging. But I do agree with you. I can tell from her conversation that she's going to be swinging too. So this is going to be nasty. This is going to be an interesting process here up into November. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. But I will say this. As President Barack Obama has mentioned, don't underestimate Donald Trump. So they have to
Do not underestimate Donald Trump, because I think what he's done, when you look at his base, and I know we're going to come back for another segment, his strategy is to make this about the economy.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to realize that many of the people, when you go on CNN and you see us in suits or radio and you see TV, people like Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon, they got a job. They're making big money. They can tell people, don't stay at home, wear your mask, wash your hands, social distance. But what about that person working in manufacturing that's been furloughed? Mm-hmm. What about the person that's lost their job, right? What are they going to do? So you have a president that's coming and saying, look, I want to open the economy back up. I know there's a cost of death. It is what it is. We have tremendous death. That's what the president says. I think 732,000 deaths worldwide and a couple of 100,000 in the U.S. Dead. He said, no, I want the economy to open up. So people are maybe going to vote for this president because they want to open up the economy. Mm-hmm. So you really have not only, a division of race and ethnicity, but you have a division on economic class.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Before we move further, Steve, we're going to take a break. We run out of time on this segment. We're going to take a break and we're going to come back and we're going to talk more about this. But I also want to talk a lot about this stimulus package because everybody's wondering what's going to happen with this fourth stimulus package. Is it going to come or is it going to not? But listen, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after this. Hello and welcome back to Get With The Program radio show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones, and today we are in the studio with Steve Rao, and we're talking a lot. We've had a wonderful conversation about Kamala Harris, pretty much the impact on the election. But Steve, before we left, we talked a lot of things, but I want to talk about this stimulus package, man. They're talking about the fourth stimulus package. A lot of people are waiting, trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills. Are they going to be able to pay their rent? And with that comes, whether people know it or not, with that comes while they're deciding in Washington, trying to figure out what they're going to do, it's going to be a lot of pressure on the economy where people are going to be broke, they're going to be struggling, and it may even increase the crime rate. So where are we with this fourth stimulus package? What do you think?
Well, first of all, the one thing the United States did do right in this pandemic is create about $3 trillion of stimulus. And this is known as the CARES Act, right? So you had about 193 million come into our home state, North Carolina, and this was going to pay for COVID expenses. But the most important part was putting stimulus checks, the $1,200 checks, in the hands of Americans and providing loans to businesses. Not a lot of money coming to cities, which is a big problem. We're going to talk about that in a minute. They ran out of money, and also the PPP, Personal Protection Act, is PPP, so paycheck protection, where you basically would get a certain amount of money, 75% of that loan could be used for payroll expense. So you had a lot of businesses using that. So to answer your question, they're in gridlock right now. First of all, the federal pandemic assistance, which was, so in North Carolina, let's say I lost my job, I'm going to get state unemployment for a certain number of weeks, and it's not very high in North Carolina, a couple of $100 a week, and you're going to get $600 of what they call federal pandemic assistance. Well, that ended about 2 weeks ago. And the Democrats wanted to continue that with another stimulus package. $1,200 in the hands of families to make a certain amount of money, less than $100,000, and then $600 a week if you're unemployed from the federal government. President Trump and the Republicans and Secretary Mnuchin wanted to make it $400. And of that $400, the deal breaker is they wanted $100, 25% paid by the state, who are having a hard time meeting their bills anyway, right? Mm-hmm. President Trump is now saying, I don't want to do another bill with the Congress. I'm just going to go in with executive order, and I'm going to say $600, $100, or $400, $100 paid by the state. He wants to withhold payroll tax exemptions, which could be bad for states because that's less money coming in. He wants to do all these things, and so they don't know right now. There's no deal, and if the longer we go with no deal, the longer the American people sit back. The other thing I'm not knowing how they're going to make their next payment, right? The second component is the money going to election boards. Most of these elections are going to be done absentee ballots. They don't have the staff to support the polling site. And the third component is schooling, which will probably end with today. Monday in North Carolina, kids are going back to school. Where we live in our state, the governor declared all virtual learning, the school board, all virtual learning, right? Mm-hmm. So the kids aren't going back to school, But how will kids get back to school, right? Are we going to be deploying more broadband in these rural areas of the United States? So hopefully the Congress will come to some agreement. But right now, they don't want to do a deal. And I don't know if the president, the other thing people don't know is that he just does executive orders. Can you do an executive order that the Congress of the United States hasn't agreed to?
That's interesting that you said that. You mentioned something earlier in that conversation. I hear this a lot too, that people are saying that they think that this whole stimulus holdup package and the deal making, the decision process is election influence. The longer this waits, the people can't get money in their hands, it could definitely trigger a whole lot of things in this election. What do you think on that?
I don't know. I think it could either, that's an interesting point. If people are suffering, because right now globally, they're looking at a 5% contraction of the economy globally because of COVID-19. Mm-hmm. But in the United States, it could be as high as 7%. Mm-hmm. So if my restaurant's closed, my business is closed.
Right.
Look at transportation. In North Carolina, because of the driving less, because we make our money on vehicle miles, gas tax, mm-hmm. the Department of Transportation funding is down $550 million in North Carolina just in the last 4 months, and they're like millions below what they're required of legally. They're supposed to have like 25 million of reserve, and their reserve is almost being depleted to under 20 million. So you can't invest in roads, you can't invest in transit. So hospitals aren't getting money. Money's not coming in. So it could hurt. To answer your question, it could totally hurt Trump, because the American people might say, wait a minute, we can't, our economy's contracted at 7%. The other side of it is President Trump might use it as a way to come in and say, look, I'm doing this by executive order. We got to open up our economy sooner. So let's open up the economy and let's get people buying. Let's get spending going. Let's get restaurants opening. So I don't know what's going to happen. In Raleigh, they've closed everything down through New Year's, already announced.
Wow.
So November and Christmas, there are not going to be a lot of Christmas parties, Christmas festivals. We're all going to be at home celebrating Christmas, right? And Thanksgiving. So I don't know what's going to happen. But the bottom line is this has never happened before in our lifetime.
The thing about it is the morale of the people. You see, with people not having money and not being able to go out and get a relief and have their bills paid, the morale is going to be down. So I'm just curious to know, are people going to want to even get out and vote, or are they going to say, I'm not voting because this is just a mess? I think a solution needs to come, whether either party is using this process to gain momentum in the voting process. They need to come up with a solution really, really quick before November. They need to come up with something quick.
My thing with Trump is I think that there's something that he, we got the Operation Warp Speed, which is what they announced in North Carolina. It's all across the country. A lot of vaccines being produced. Mm-hmm. Russia already produced their vaccine, and President Putin, is already inoculated. They said his daughter was inoculated. There are a lot of criticisms that it's not like the United States. They can just do stuff without a lot of regulation. So we don't even know if the vaccine is safe. But let's say President Trump is able to come up with a vaccine by October or September, right? Mm-hmm. And they're able to do some major deal. Well, he's got the pulpit of the presidency. He could say, we have a vaccine. We're going to open up. Everything's fine. He gets reelected again. It could be that things are so bad, it takes 5 months to roll the vaccine out. Then it's like when Reagan won the presidency against Jimmy Carter. It was Carter's last-minute negotiations that brought the hostages back, but they waited until Ronald Reagan was sworn in until the hostages landed on the soil of the United States.
That's my point.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it could be the other way, where Biden wins, even though he wins because of the vaccine, and then it's just done. Right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know what's going to happen, Gary. All I can tell you before our last segment is that, the countries that have responded best to the pandemic are Germany, Taiwan, which is a very strong technology company, even though TikTok is going to be banned soon. President Trump wants to ban TikTok. Other countries like Singapore have been very good at during the pandemic. What's amazing is that of the 20 million worldwide cases, it took 6 months, or it took 4 months to 5 months to get to 10 million. But the rest of the increases in COVID-19 have come in the last 2.5 months. And guess what the top three countries are? United States of America, India, and Brazil.
And what's so
Brazil
interesting about that? What does that say about America and the Indian community? Because we have a lot of high tech doctors from the Indian community. And what does that say about America that we are suffering the most? We're supposed to be the healing nation.
Well, Gary, that's a good question. So I think, first of all, let's start with the United States response. Whatever I make today isn't against the president. I'm just looking at the government of the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we did well is stimulus. And we're good at that because we can print our own currency. So there's no country in the world that can print $3 trillion worth of money and bail businesses out. And the fact is, we can't do a fourth stimulus package. So countries like Brazil and India, they can't do that, right? We do have a lot of doctors, so we're able to deal with the pandemic. Where India, I read, is falling short of doctors because doctors don't want to leave their homes now. After they go on COVID duty, they want to stay home for a week, 10 days. So there's a shortage of doctors. But I think what the United States did not do a good job of is it's not that there are two areas where I see failures. First is, we're not producing enough tests. But even when we do, it's getting the results of the test back within a 48-hour, 24-hour period. It's taking some people 10 days to get the test back. So what that means is that they could be carrying the symptoms of the COVID virus and they're not being contained.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the number of tests. With President Trump, he promised us 5 million tests. We're not even close, right? In North Carolina, we had, I think, 1,823,000 tests as of yesterday, right? But it's not just the number of tests; it's the positive rate. You have to get that down to 5% in order to be safe. There's some states in the United States whose positive rate is 25%, like Texas, like Florida, right? They opened up too early, and people were coming in, right?
Mm-hmm.
The messaging has been off. We never really had a major lockdown, right? We're locked down, stay-at-home order, but you can do this, you can do this. So what's happened is the infection rate has continued to rise in the United States.
Hey, Steve, hold that thought right there. Listen, we're going to take a break. We're running into a break here. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and talk more about this coronavirus and the vaccines because it's a lot going on, and a lot of it is politically driven. So listen, we're going to take a break. Listen, don't touch that dial. You listen to Get With The Program radio show. We'll be right back after this. Hello and welcome back to Get With The Program radio show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones, and today we're joined in the studio with Steve Rao. Steve Rao is definitely a person out there in the field. Steve is a native of Charleston, West Virginia, serves as a council member at large and a former mayor pro tem for the town of Morrisville, North Carolina. Steve Rao, your bio speaks for itself, man. I could go on and on, but you are definitely in the community. We talked a lot about the vaccine and, of course, the stimulus package. But now, first of all, welcome back. How about that?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You know what? This is not your first rodeo, man. You've been on this show several times. The vaccine, we hear a lot about Russia has the vaccine, and they haven't fully tested it, is what I'm hearing. And I know Trump and Russia, those guys are has been friends. I wonder, are there any correlation there with them? Are there any correlation with the two?
Between Russia and China, you mean?
Russia and Donald Trump.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's been talk about that even earlier. He was friends with Putin. I mean, Trump. So who knows? I mean, I know that in the new economy, it's really looking like the new Cold War is going to be between China and the United States of America. So we're banning products from China. We put tariffs on China. Laptop deliveries in the United States are being delayed, which could affect some parents in our school system. So only time is going to tell about this new Cold War that's emerging between China and the U.S. But I would say today that the relationship between Russia and the United States is going back to the way it was even before the Cold War, right? I mean, President Putin is basically running for re-election. He, I think, is, over the years has created a very self-reliant economy where they're closing Russia off. They don't want foreign direct investment coming. With globalization going down in the world, that could be Putin's great advantage, that he isolates Russia. So the scary part is we simply don't know, right? Mm-hmm. And we're seeing this nationalism pop up everywhere in the world, from India to China to, and immigration, for example, not only in the United States, and I'm going to come back and talk about immigration in a couple of weeks, but we're talking about skilled immigration, closing the border, building a wall. But this president, let's not forget, he calls it the China virus. Yes, it started in Wuhan, China, but I do think it's a bit unfair to call it a China virus where people are coming from all around the world and contracting this virus, right? Like any global pandemic, which Bill Gates, you talked about vaccines. Bill Gates has been saying we have to invest more in vaccines. We have to invest more in contact tracing. We have to be prepared for pandemics. We need to even look at maybe the United States military and armed forces, that we have a pandemic military force, that if this were ever to happen again, we have the resources, we have the hospitals, we have the dollars, we have the capital ready to invest. Because guess what? A pandemic can kill more people than a nuclear war.
Mm-hmm.
And we have lost in the United States more people than we lost in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
More dedicated Americans who died in Vietnam, a tragic war, right? More people have died in this pandemic than the Vietnam War, right?
No, that is so true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's scary.
Now, this is the thing I hear a lot also, because I'm always have my ears to the streets here. I hear a lot of people saying, don't take the vaccine. I hear that a lot. I hear people saying, don't take the vaccine. It could be something wrong with the vaccine. We had different experiments years ago where the vaccine was given to African Americans and it caused a lot of problems. So what is your take? Do you feel strongly about people taking the vaccine once it comes out?
Well, first of all, absolutely. I mean, it's, to me, as a person that values science, not only as an elected official, the United States of America has one of the most stringent Federal Drug Administration in the world. In order to get a drug to market, you have to go through phase 1 trial. You have to go through phase 2 trial. You have to go through phase 3 trial. You have to apply, let's say we're a vaccine, fast track FDA approval. And this is no joke. So unlike Russia, there is so much work to be done. And I want to be commending, I know a lot of CEOs in North Carolina, and every single one of them, we have so many just in our own home state. BioCryst, Mako Medical, Novo, Fujifilm Diosynth, which is manufacturing Novavax, and they're headquartered in my hometown of Morrisville. It takes a lot of work to get these vaccines. So by the time it's approved by our country and our FDA, absolutely, a vaccine is safe. You are throwing out conspiracy theories by saying don't take the vaccine because it's not safe. I can tell you that I'm 105% sure that any vaccine that is approved by our government, with the greatest scientists in the world working in these United States, we lead the world in R&D, that it's going to be good enough and safe to take. I don't think you do any favor to the American people by going out and saying, don't take a vaccine because it's not safe.
Right.
I mean, we take a flu vaccine. We took a smallpox vaccine. We've had vaccines before. We've had pandemics before. Don't forget the Spanish flu, right? So I think that at the end of the day, it's conspiracy, and we need to make sure we're doing the right thing at the end of the day.
That's true. I know there was an experiment that was done to African Americans years ago, and that caused some eyebrows to raise up. Now, this is something I had a chance to run across. Cuba's potential vaccine. Cuba had good results, and this is what was said. It said a potential coronavirus vaccine in Cuba used to treat 58 patients, including those with severe and critical conditions from COVID-19, gave promising results, according to a Cuban expert. Muzio said 72% of critically ill patients and 90% of severe cases recovered from the virus with the vaccine treatment. Cuba has 2,107 coronavirus cases and 83 deaths, while recoveries neared the 2,000 mark. Now, this is according to the data compiled by a U.S.-based Johns Hopkins University. Now, again, we're talking about a U.S.-based university here in the United States. So do you think the United States is going to want to accept the vaccine from Cuba? And it's already showing that it's working.
I think so. As long as it goes through the data and the tests, and it seems to be working, I don't see a problem with accepting it. And I think they're going to be vaccines developed in other parts of the world, and there needs to be a global supply chain to put the vaccine in the hands of people that need it in Cuba, that need it in India, that need it. You've got big companies like Pfizer that are working on the vaccine. One that came out of the UNC, Gilead biopharma in California now. They've got the drug remdesivir. So there's so many of them, Gary. So I don't know enough about this specific drug, but I think that it's based on good data. And, that is important, Gary, data, technology. We need to start using data and technology more effectively, even artificial intelligence and predictive analytics. I mean, there's a guy in North Carolina who's actually developed a COVID-19 brain, artificial intelligence, taking data and providing that to cities and businesses so they can better predict, like, is it safe to go back? Where are the hotspots for the virus? We have to respect privacy, but can you imagine an actual brain? They call it a COVID-19 brain. I've actually seen this thing. They can create brains now, brains based on data with a machine to make the predictions. I think that the United States of America, there is no country in the world stronger in technology, the home to Google, the home to Microsoft, the home of the headquarters to Amazon, of Cisco. And John Chambers is hosting a virtual startup summit on September 3rd. I'm bringing him as a guest. He's from my home state of West Virginia. I think Chambers is right. We need to come up with a playbook. He's got a great book called Connecting the Dots. In this thing, he talks about anytime there's a downturn, you need to have a playbook. And your playbook is no different than playing a football game. What are the plays I'm going to call to get me through the tough times right now, right? And we're in a tough time right now. And we're only going to get out if we can have a good playbook. And that's my closing message. I mean, we just finished with a tropical storm Isaias, right? But I cannot think of a more perfect storm going on now. You've got division. You have racial turmoil on the heels of a presidential election, 81 days away, in the middle of a global pandemic, hundreds of thousands of people dying around the world. Almost sounds like a Tom Clancy novel.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting race here. We got about 30 seconds. It's going to be a very interesting race because we have a president that's in there now who is very aggressive to say anything. And then we have, of course, we got Joe Biden coming up. Then we got Kamala. She's new to the game and inside this strong race. Now, with that being said, do you think Joe Biden and Kamala can repair this economy after defeating Donald Trump, if that be the case? Because that's going to be a strong fight.
I don't know. I mean, that's going to be interesting. I mean, I think if they were elected, I think they'll be dealing with the COVID pandemic differently. I think Biden will tend to surround himself more with scientists and science as he makes decisions. I think he'll have a very different foreign policy, trying to get more of a collaboration and unify the world and start working together. So they'll have to build bridges, and then working with India and other countries. India's Independence Day is on Saturday, by the way. 73rd Indian Independence Day. So we want to wish every Indian American out there and a reminder that Gandhi fought for India's freedom through civil disobedience, inspired Dr. King and John Lewis and all these great things. But I think it's just going to come down to their playbook. But I think they have a different playbook, and now they've got to convince the American people that they're the ones to be in that Oval Office making the decisions. I think America can do it. We overcame World War II. We sent man to the moon. We won the space race. We're the United States of America. And I think that we need to come together as Americans, and if we do, this crisis.
All right, Steve Rowell. Hey, Steve Rowell, let's go about wrap it up for the show, man. I want to thank you for joining me today here with Get With The Program radio show. It's a pleasure, Steve. You keep out there working, man. I see you busy. Keep doing what you do. We're loving it.
Hey, buddy, I love it, man.
And we're looking forward to bringing you back. Steve, I'm going to be getting back with you, man, and keep us updated what's going on in the election process, okay?
I'll be back in a few weeks. Every day is a different day. Be well and be safe.
Take care now.
God bless America.
All right, God bless America. Take care, Steve. Once again, you listen to Get With The Program radio show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones. As I always say, stay positive, keep your head up, and remember to
Get with the program.
What you talking about?
The program. The program. Get with the program.
Everybody clap to this. Say what?
Get with the program.
It starts now.